My name is Robin Walker and I am 34 years old, running a multi-million-dollar tech company that I built from scratch. But 12 years ago, I was just a kid with a backpack, standing in the rain after my parents kicked me out to pour everything into my golden sister Amanda. Now they are homeless after she drained their accounts and disappeared. Before I tell you what happened when my parents showed up desperate at my door after my sister betrayed them, let me know where you are watching from and subscribe if family drama hits close to home. Growing up in suburban Boston, Massachusetts, life started out relatively normal. Our middle-class family lived in a modest 3-bedroom house, with my father working as an account manager at a local insurance company and my mother teaching part-time at the elementary school. I was their only child for 4 years, and while they were never overly affectionate parents, I remember feeling secure and reasonably happy. Everything changed when Amanda was born. From the moment my parents brought her home from the hospital, wrapped in a pink blanket with a tiny bow headband that looked ridiculous on her bald head, the family dynamic shifted dramatically. My father, usually reserved and somewhat distant, transformed around Amanda. His eyes would light up when he held her, cooing and making faces I had never seen directed at me. "She is going to be a heartbreaker," he would say proudly to visitors. "Look at those eyes. She is going to be something special." As Amanda grew from infant to toddler, the favoritism became more pronounced. My mother, who had always been practical and measured with me, became excessively indulgent with Amanda. When I turned 7 and Amanda was 3, my birthday party was a simple affair with a store-bought cake and a few neighborhood kids. 2 months later, Amanda's birthday featured professional decorations, a hired clown, and what seemed like every child in the neighborhood. "Your sister is more social," my mother explained when I asked why my party had been so much smaller. "She needs the extra attention." By the time I was 10, I had learned to live in the background of our family life. Amanda's beauty pageants and dance recitals dominated our weekends and family conversations. The refrigerator door, once bearing my academic achievements, gradually became a shrine to Amanda's participation trophies and pageant photos. My straight A's became expected rather than celebrated, while Amanda's passing grades were treated like remarkable achievements. "Robin, help your sister with her homework," my mother would say. "You are so good at math, and she struggles with it." I did not mind helping initially, but as years passed, it became clear that Amanda was not struggling. She simply was not trying. Why should she? Her batting eyelashes and dramatic sighs were enough to make my parents rush to solve any challenge she faced. One particularly painful memory stands out from when I was 12. After months of preparation, I won first place in the regional science fair with a computer program I had coded myself. It was my proudest achievement, and the judge, a professor from MIT, had even given me his card and encouraged me to stay in touch about future competitions. That same weekend, Amanda had a minor role in a local ballet recital. She missed several steps and was visibly out of sync with the other dancers, but my parents filmed the entire performance and cheered loudly enough to embarrass everyone around them. When we got home, my father popped champagne, which he and my mother drank while Amanda and I had sparkling cider, to celebrate our little star. My science fair trophy sat unmentioned on the coffee table until I finally took it to my room. Later that night, I overheard my father on the phone with my grandmother. "Amanda was absolutely magical on stage today. She has real talent, Mom. The other kids were nothing compared to her." Not a word about my achievement. By 14, I had become almost entirely self-reliant. I started working after school at the local computer repair shop, partly to learn more about technology, but mostly to escape the suffocating atmosphere at home. Mr. Grayson, the shop owner, became more of a mentor to me than my father ever was. He taught me not just about fixing computers, but about business ethics and self-respect. "You have got a good head on your shoulders, kid," he would say, "and hands that know what they are doing. That combination will take you far." I started saving money, sensing even then that I would need it to forge my own path. While my parents drained their accounts funding Amanda's modeling lessons, pageant costumes, and career development workshops of questionable legitimacy, I was building my own safety net, dollar by dollar. At 16, I created my first app, a simple program that helped local businesses schedule and track employee hours. It made $500 in its first month. I never told my family about this success, knowing somehow that it would either be dismissed or somehow redirected to benefit Amanda. Instead, I reinvested the money into better equipment and books on programming. The final blow to any illusion of parental fairness came during my junior year of high school. I had been researching colleges, focusing on computer science programs with good scholarship opportunities. One evening, I overheard my parents discussing finances in hushed tones at the kitchen table. "We will need to use some of Robin's college fund," my mother was saying. "The modeling agency says Amanda needs professional photos and runway training if she is going to make it in New York after graduation." "What about Robin's school?" my father asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. "Robin is smart. He will get scholarships," my mother replied dismissively. "Besides, Amanda's opportunity is now. She cannot wait, or she will miss her window. Robin can always take a gap year, or go to community college first." I stood frozen in the hallway, a cold realization washing over me. The college fund my grandparents had started for me when I was born, the one my parents had supposedly been contributing to all these years, was being sacrificed for Amanda's modeling pipe dreams. That night, I made a decision. I would excel so dramatically that I would not need their support. I would find a way out on my own terms. The next day, I applied for every scholarship I could find and increased my hours at the computer shop. Mr. Grayson, seeing my determination, gave me more responsibility and higher-level repair jobs that paid better. "Whatever is driving you, kid, use it," he advised. "But do not let it consume you." I did not tell him about what I had overheard. I did not tell anyone. Instead, I channeled all my hurt and disappointment into building my escape plan. By senior year, my grades were perfect. My SAT scores were in the top percentile, and I had developed 2 more apps that were generating modest but growing revenue. Amanda, meanwhile, was flunking classes but somehow still on track to graduate. My parents hired tutors for her and repeatedly met with school administrators to ensure special accommodations for their uniquely gifted daughter. The contrast could not have been more stark. I succeeded despite their neglect, while Amanda struggled despite their excessive support. The foundation was being laid for the inevitable breaking point that would come all too soon. High school graduation day should have been one of the proudest moments of my life. After years of hard work, I was graduating valedictorian with a full scholarship to Massachusetts Institute of Technology. The morning started with me rehearsing my speech in front of the bathroom mirror, a speech I had worked on for weeks, distilling lessons about perseverance and self-belief that I had learned the hard way. My parents were supposed to be at the ceremony by 9 in the morning for the special breakfast honoring top students and their families. I waited by the entrance, watching other students greet their beaming parents. By 9:30, I accepted they were not coming and went in alone. Mr. Grayson, who had closed his shop to attend, saved me a seat at his table. "Their loss, kid," he said gruffly, clapping me on the shoulder. It was not until just before the main ceremony that my parents finally arrived, looking harried and unapologetic. "Amanda had an emergency," my mother explained breathlessly as they found their seats. "The modeling agency called with a last-minute casting opportunity. We had to drive her into the city this morning." "Did she get the job?" I asked, already knowing what mattered to them. "Not yet, but the agent said she made a great impression," my father replied proudly. "They will call back next week." They never asked about the breakfast they had missed or the speech I would soon give. When my name was called as valedictorian, Mr. Grayson whistled loudly. My parents applauded politely, but I caught them checking their phones repeatedly during my speech. Later at home, I tried to share my excitement about the MIT scholarship. "That is nice, honey," my mother said distractedly. "But listen to this. Amanda might have a chance at a modeling contract in New York." The entire evening became about Amanda's potential career, with my father already talking about apartments in Manhattan and how they might need to invest in her future. My full ride to one of the most prestigious technical universities in the world was a footnote in the family narrative. That summer was tense and lonely. I worked 2 jobs, mornings at the computer shop and evenings at a local restaurant, saving every penny for expenses the scholarship wouldn't cover. Meanwhile, Amanda flitted between casting calls and shopping sprees, each one funded by my increasingly debt-ridden parents. In July, I discovered just how far they had gone to support Amanda's ambitions. A letter from the bank arrived while my parents were driving Amanda to yet another audition. Curiosity got the better of me, and I opened it to find they had taken out a second mortgage on our house, $200,000, nearly all the equity they had built over 20 years, now drained away. When they returned home, I confronted them with the letter. "You opened our mail?" my mother snapped, snatching the paper from my hands. "You mortgaged the house? For what?" I demanded, though I already knew the answer. "Mind your own business," my father growled. "We are the parents. We decide how to manage our finances. It is for Amanda's career launch," my mother finally admitted. "These opportunities do not come along every day. The agency needs capital for her portfolio development, runway training, and placement fees." "Sounds like a scam," I said bluntly. "Have they guaranteed any actual modeling work?" "You have always been jealous of your sister's potential," my father exploded, his face reddening. "She has a real shot at something special. What would you have us do? Ignore it because you cannot stand to see her succeed?" "I have worked for everything I have achieved," I countered, trying to keep my voice steady. "I earned my scholarship through hard work. I saved for college expenses by working 2 jobs. Meanwhile, you are throwing money at an industry known for exploiting naive girls and their families." "That is enough," my mother interjected. "Either support your sister's dreams or—" She trailed off, but her implication was clear. "Or what?" I challenged. "Or I am not part of this family, because it feels like I have not been for a long time." The argument escalated. Years of pent-up resentment poured out as I detailed the constant favoritism, the dismissal of my achievements, the draining of my college fund. My parents deflected, justified, and finally attacked. "If you cannot be happy for your sister, maybe you should leave," my mother said coldly. "This negativity is harmful to her confidence." "I will be gone in a few weeks anyway," I replied, referring to my departure for college. "Maybe you should go now," my father said, his voice dangerously quiet. "If you think we are such terrible parents, why wait?" I thought he was bluffing, using a threat to shut down the argument. I was wrong. "Get out," he continued, pointing to the door. "Take what you can carry and go. When you learn some gratitude and stop trying to hold your sister back, maybe you can come back." My mother stood beside him, arms crossed, her expression unflinching. "We have given you everything, Robin, and all you do is criticize and undermine your sister's one chance at success." In shock, I retreated to my room and grabbed my backpack. I stuffed it with essential clothes, my laptop, hard drive with all my coding projects, and the cash I kept hidden in my desk drawer. Thank goodness I had kept most of my savings in a bank account they could not access. Rain had started falling as I walked out the front door. Neither parent tried to stop me. Neither one called out or showed any sign of reconsidering. The last thing I heard was my mother saying, "He will cool off and come back apologizing tomorrow." But I would not return to apologize. That rainy night marked the end of my life as their son, and the beginning of my life as my own person. I walked 4 miles in the downpour to my friend Jake's house, soaked to the skin and numb with disbelief. His parents, unlike mine, took one look at me standing on their porch and welcomed me inside without hesitation. They gave me dry clothes, a hot meal, and a couch to sleep on without demanding an explanation I was not ready to give. The next morning, I awoke to multiple text messages from my mother. "Stop being dramatic and come home. Your father didn't mean it. You're upsetting your sister." And finally, "Don't come back until you can appreciate your sister and what we're trying to do for her." With trembling hands, I turned off my phone. The mixed messages were clear enough. They wanted my presence but not my voice, my support but not my concerns, my subservience but not my authentic self. Jake's parents let me stay for 2 weeks, until I found an affordable room to rent near MIT. I deferred my first semester, knowing I needed to work full-time to build a more substantial financial cushion. The computer shop offered me more hours, and I picked up another job doing night security at an office building, a quiet post that allowed me to code on my laptop between rounds. The hurt was profound, a constant ache beneath my daily activities. But beneath the pain was something else, determination. I would build a life so solid, so successful, that I would never again be vulnerable to such casual disposal. My first apartment was barely more than a closet with a window, a tiny bedroom, and a rundown triple-decker, shared with two other guys I found through a housing board. Marcus was a community college student studying automotive technology, and Phil worked night shifts at a hospital. Between their odd hours and my double jobs, we rarely saw each other, which suited me fine. The rent was $300 a month. Utilities included, expensive for what it was, but within my budget if I worked 50 hours weekly. My routine was grueling but purposeful. Mornings and early afternoons at the computer shop, evenings coding, and overnight security shifts 3 times a week. I slept in 4-hour blocks whenever I could fit them in. On Sundays, my only true day off, I would collapse into near hibernation, waking only to eat and occasionally shower before falling back into exhausted sleep. What kept me going was the app I was developing, a streamlined inventory management system for small businesses. Mr. Grayson let me test early versions at his shop, providing invaluable feedback. 6 months of relentless work later, I had a functioning product ready for market. I priced it accessibly at $29 per month, focusing on volume rather than high margins. With Mr. Grayson's connections in the local business community, I secured 10 clients in the first month. By month 3, I had 50 users and was earning enough to quit the security job and focus on tech support and development. 8 months after being kicked out of my parents' home, I officially withdrew from MIT to pursue entrepreneurship full-time, a decision that both terrified and exhilarated me. The scholarship would go to waste, but formal education felt increasingly irrelevant to the path I was forging. My breakthrough came at a regional tech conference I had saved up to attend. Unable to afford the networking dinner, I was packing up to leave when Sam Rodriguez, founder of a successful software company, stopped by my modest booth. "This interface is clean," he commented, playing with the demo on my laptop. "Did you code this yourself?" For 20 minutes, Sam grilled me on the technical aspects of my app, the market positioning, and my growth strategy. I answered honestly, including admitting where I had knowledge gaps. "Kid, you have raw talent," he said finally, "but you need guidance and capital to scale this properly." Sam became my mentor and first investor, putting $50,000 into my company for a 15% stake, a deal I later realized was extremely generous, given my inexperience. More valuable than the money was his guidance, introducing me to industry contacts and helping me avoid costly mistakes. There were plenty of failures along the way. My second product was a complete flop, costing 3 months of development time and nearly depleting my cash reserves. An early hire embezzled $8,000 before I caught on. A server crash lost customer data that took weeks to reconstruct. Each setback taught painful but necessary lessons about business, technology, and human nature. By 22, I had landed my first major client, a regional grocery chain that adopted my inventory system across 12 locations. The contract value was just over $100,000 annually, enough to rent a real office and hire 2 developers and a customer service representative. As the business grew, I maintained a frugal personal lifestyle. I moved to a better apartment but kept roommates. I drove a used car bought with cash. Every spare dollar went back into the company or my savings. The financial insecurity of my ejection from home had left scars that manifested as intense frugality. Occasionally, through mutual hometown acquaintances or social media, I would catch glimpses of my biological family's life. Amanda's modeling career seemed to consist mainly of local mall fashion shows and Instagram posts tagged with model and blessed. My parents continued posting proud updates about her mediocre achievements while maintaining radio silence about my existence. I told myself their absence was a gift, freeing me from the toxic dynamic that had defined my childhood. Still, on quiet nights when work was done and distractions were exhausted, I sometimes found myself staring at old family photos, wondering how blood relatives could become such strangers. At 26, a dating app matched me with Lindsay Marshall, marketing director for a mid-sized clothing retailer. Our first date lasted 5 hours, conversation flowing effortlessly from professional challenges to childhood memories. I found myself cautiously sharing pieces of my family history. "They chose her," I explained, more matter-of-factly than the subject deserved. Every time, in every way, they chose her. Lindsay reached across the table and took my hand. "Their loss," she said simply. Unlike previous relationships where I had kept emotional distance, with Lindsay I found myself gradually opening up. She neither dismissed my pain nor allowed me to be defined by it. When I apologized for talking too much about my past, she said something I will never forget. "Your history made you who you are, and I happen to like who you are. The parts that hurt you are just as important as the parts that didn't." 2 years into our relationship, my company hit 50 employees and moved to larger offices in a downtown high-rise. We had expanded beyond inventory management to comprehensive small business software solutions, with annual revenue approaching $4 million. I bought my first home, nothing ostentatious, but a comfortable 3-bedroom house in a good neighborhood with a dedicated office space. Lindsay moved in, bringing warmth and personality to rooms I would have left Spartan. We talked about marriage, children, the future we wanted to build together. For the first time, I began to envision a family of my own, one based on mutual respect and genuine affection, rather than competition and conditional love. Sometimes I wondered if my parents knew about my success. Boston's tech scene was small enough that my company had been featured in local business publications. Did they ever Google their son's name? Did they ever regret their choice? I told myself it did not matter. I had built this life without them. Their approval or regret was irrelevant to who I had become. Then came the call that would shatter my carefully constructed detachment and force me to confront the family I had tried to leave behind. The company's 5th anniversary party was in full swing: open bar, live band, gourmet catering. Employees and their families mingled with clients and industry contacts in the art gallery we had rented for the occasion. Lindsay had organized everything perfectly, and I was making the rounds, thanking team members for their contributions to our success. My phone buzzed with an unknown number. I normally would have ignored it during such an event, but something prompted me to step outside and answer. "Is this Robin Walker?" The voice was vaguely familiar, but not immediately placeable. "Speaking. Who is this?" "It is Mark. Your cousin, Aunt Judith's son." Mark and I had played together at family gatherings as children, but had lost touch after my parents' rejection. His call was so unexpected that it took me a moment to process. "Mark, hi. It has been a long time. Look, I am not sure if I should be calling, but there is some family stuff going on. Bad stuff." A cold knot formed in my stomach. "What kind of stuff?" "Your parents remortgaged their house again, took out every penny they could get. They gave it all to Amanda for some investment opportunity in Europe. She left 2 weeks ago with the money. Now she is not answering their calls, and her social media accounts have gone dark." The knot in my stomach tightened. "How much money?" "Everything they had. The house, retirement accounts, credit cards maxed out. Mom says it is close to $400,000. I leaned against the gallery's brick wall, struggling to process this information. After all these years of blind devotion, Amanda had apparently taken their money and run. Part of me wanted to laugh at the cosmic justice. A larger part felt an unwelcome twinge of concern for the people who had thrown me away. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked Mark. "They are in denial right now, still making excuses for her. But they are going to lose the house, Robin. They have nothing left." I thought you should know. "Thank you for calling," I said mechanically, ending the conversation as quickly as possible. Back inside the gallery, Lindsay immediately sensed something was wrong. I waited until we were home to tell her about Mark's call and my conflicted feelings. "They made their choices," I said, pacing our living room. "They chose her over me at every turn. Now she has taken them for everything. It is almost poetic." Lindsay watched me carefully. "What are you thinking of doing?" "Nothing. Why would I do anything? They kicked me out. They have not contacted me in 12 years. Because, despite everything, they are still your parents," she said gently. "And I know you. You will torture yourself wondering if they are okay." She was right, of course. Even after a restless night, I could not shake the situation from my mind. I decided to investigate from a distance, rather than contact my parents directly. I hired David Mercer, a private investigator recommended by our company's security consultant. His instructions were straightforward. Locate Amanda in Europe, determine what she had done with the money, and assess my parents' financial situation without alerting them to my involvement. 2 weeks later, Mercer delivered his report. Amanda was living in Monaco, photographed on yachts and in casinos with a rotation of wealthy older men. There was no sign of business investment, just luxury shopping, 5-star hotels, and exclusive clubs. Meanwhile, my parents had received their first foreclosure notice. My father was trying to find higher-paying work at 61, while my mother had taken a second job at a department store. The most telling detail in Mercer's report was a conversation he overheard at their house while posing as a mortgage consultant. When he gently suggested Amanda might have misled them, my mother became defensive. "She is building important connections," she insisted. "These things take time in the fashion world. The investment will pay off soon." They were still in denial, still choosing to believe in Amanda despite overwhelming evidence of her betrayal. I decided to help anonymously. Through a lawyer, I offered to purchase their second mortgage from the bank at a discount, then restructure the payments to make them manageable. When the lawyer revealed the source of the funds, my parents rejected the arrangement outright. "Tell him we do not need his charity," my father reportedly said. "Our daughter will be sending money soon." 3 days later, my father suffered a minor heart attack, stress-induced, according to Mercer's hospital sources. My mother took to social media with tearful posts about family struggles and bad luck, portraying them as victims of circumstance rather than their own choices. Still, not once did they reach out directly to me, their son who lived less than 20 miles away. Pride, shame, or some toxic combination of both kept them from acknowledging their dire situation to the child they had discarded. Amanda, meanwhile, had completely ghosted them. Her social media reactivated, but now all posts were from exotic locations with no mention of her parents or their investment. When they managed to reach her on a new phone number, she promised to wire money next week before changing the number again. The bank foreclosure proceeded, and a sale date was set. Mercer reported my parents were liquidating furniture and personal belongings on online marketplaces. My mother's posts became increasingly desperate, vaguely referencing needing a miracle without specifying their circumstances. Lindsay and I had many difficult conversations during this period. She supported whatever decision I made, but worried about the emotional toll of re-engaging with the family that had hurt me so profoundly. "If you help them," she warned, "set clear boundaries. They have not changed just because they are suffering the consequences of their actions." I arranged for another lawyer to offer them a small apartment in a decent neighborhood, rent-free for 6 months. Again, when they learned I was behind the offer, they refused. "We don't want anything from him," my mother told the lawyer. "He abandoned this family years ago. We have a real daughter who cares about us." That rejection, ironically, provided the closure I needed. I had offered help twice, and twice they had chosen their illusions over reality. I informed Mercer to stop monitoring the situation and tried to put the matter behind me. For nearly a year, I heard nothing more about my parents. Lindsay and I got engaged, planning a small wedding for the following spring. The company continued growing, expanding to new markets and hiring dozens of additional employees. Life moved forward. Then came the rainy Tuesday evening that would bring everything full circle. The doorbell rang at 8:45 on a miserable November evening. Rain pounded against the windows, and wind howled through the trees in our yard. Lindsay and I were watching a movie, nestled under blankets with bowls of popcorn when the unexpected sound interrupted our quiet night. "Are we expecting someone?" I asked, already knowing we were not. Lindsay shook her head as I reluctantly paused the film and went to the door. Through the peephole, I saw 2 figures huddled beneath the porch light, an older man with stooped shoulders and a woman with rain-plastered gray hair. Something about their posture sparked recognition before I even processed their faces. My parents. For a moment, I considered not answering. Then, with a deep breath, I opened the door. 12 years had aged them dramatically. My father's once commanding presence had diminished, his tall frame now hunched and frail. My mother's carefully maintained appearance had given way to visible exhaustion, deep lines etched around her downturned mouth. Both looked thoroughly soaked and profoundly defeated. "Robin," my mother said, her voice breaking slightly, We need to talk to you." "How did you find my address?" I asked, neither inviting them in nor explicitly turning them away. "Mark gave it to us," my father admitted. "Please, son, just a few minutes of your time." Lindsay appeared beside me, her hand finding mine in silent support. "This is Lindsay, my fiancée," I said. "Lindsay, these are my parents, Richard and Diana Walker." After a brief, awkward exchange of pleasantries, I reluctantly stepped back, allowing them into the entryway. They stood dripping on the hardwood floor, taking in the home I had built without them, the art on the walls, the comfortable furniture, the obvious signs of success and stability. "You have a beautiful home," my mother offered tentatively. "Thank you. Why are you here?" My father cleared his throat. "We have had some financial setbacks. The house was foreclosed on last month." "I know," I said simply. "You know?" My mother looked surprised. "Boston is not that big a city." An uncomfortable silence followed as they processed the implications that I had been aware of their situation but had not reached out. Lindsay suggested they might want to dry off and offered to make coffee. Once seated in the living room with steaming mugs, the full story emerged in halting, pride-swallowing increments. They had been living in their car for 2 weeks, staying in various parking lots and occasionally splurging on a motel room when the weather was particularly bad. My father had found temporary work at a hardware store but lost it after missing shifts due to his health. My mother's department store job barely covered gas and food. "We have tried everything," she said, hands clutched around her coffee mug as if drawing warmth from it. "Your Aunt Judith let us stay for a while, but her husband, well, they don't have the room long term." "What about Amanda?" I asked, already knowing the answer. My father's face darkened. "She took everything, all our savings, the equity from the house. She promised it was for a modeling agency investment, that she would triple our money within 6 months. And you believed her." "She is our daughter," my mother said defensively, then caught herself as the irony of her words registered. "I mean, we thought we could trust her." "The way you trusted me?" I could not help asking. My father attempted what I assumed was meant to be an apology. "We made mistakes, Robin. We see that now. Families should stick together in hard times." The statement rang hollow, focusing on their current needs rather than their past actions. I noticed my mother surveying the living room, eyes lingering on the large television and modern furniture. "You seem to have done well for yourself," she observed. "This house must have cost a fortune." "I worked for everything I have," I replied evenly. "Your sister could have been successful too, if she had had the right support," my father muttered. "That agency took advantage of her." Lindsay, who had been quietly observing, raised an eyebrow at this persistent blindness. I squeezed her hand in appreciation of her restraint. "What exactly do you want from me?" I asked directly. My mother shifted uncomfortably. "We thought, maybe we could stay here for a while, just until we get back on our feet. Your house is certainly big enough." "We're family," my father added, as if that single word should erase 12 years of absence. The audacity was breathtaking. No real acknowledgement of how they had treated me, no genuine apology, just an expectation that I would welcome them with open arms now that their golden child had abandoned them. "This is a lot to process," I said carefully. "I need time to think about it." "We could help around the house," my mother offered quickly. "I noticed your kitchen could use some organization." Lindsay stiffened beside me, and I felt a surge of protective anger at the implied criticism of our home. I suggested they stay the night in our guest room, giving everyone time to rest and consider next steps. As Lindsay prepared the room, my parents continued making comments that revealed their unchanged perspective. If only everyone had supported Amanda properly. My father lamented while examining the framed article about my company on the wall. She had real connections in the industry. "Those modeling agents promised such big returns," my mother added. "How were we supposed to know they weren't legitimate?" During dinner, a simple pasta dish Lindsay quickly prepared. My father made an offhand remark that finally broke my composure. "You always were practical, Robin. Not creative and visionary like your sister, but steady. I guess that turned out okay for you." Lindsay set down her fork with deliberate care. Robin built a multi-million-dollar company from nothing. He employs over 70 people. His practicality has changed lives and created value in ways your daughter's vision never did. My father flushed. I didn't mean. I think, I interrupted. It is time for everyone to get some rest. We can talk more tomorrow. That night, Lindsay and I had an intense whispered conversation in our bedroom. They haven't changed, she observed. They're still idealizing Amanda and minimizing you, even after everything she did to them. I know, I sighed. But they're sleeping in their car, Lindsay. Whatever they did, I can't just throw them back on the street. You're a better person than they deserve, she replied, kissing my forehead. In the morning, my mother's comment about Lindsay's career choice, suggesting it was nice she had a hobby job when she had a successful fiancé, was the final straw. I asked Lindsay to give me time alone with my parents, then calmly requested they leave. Leave? My mother repeated incredulously. Where are we supposed to go? That's not actually my problem, I replied. But I won't have you disrespect Lindsay in our home. We're your parents, my father protested. You can't just throw us out in the cold. The irony of his statement hung in the air between us, unacknowledged by anyone but me. I'll help you find a place to stay, I said finally. But it won't be here. We'll talk tomorrow about what that help might look like. As they gathered their few belongings, their shock at not receiving an immediate financial rescue was palpable. They had come expecting the son they had discarded to provide instant salvation without apology, without growth, without even basic courtesy toward the woman I loved. The pattern of toxic entitlement remained unchanged, even when they had nothing left but the clothes on their backs. That night was one of the longest of my life. Lindsay and I talked until 3 a.m, weighing options, examining my obligations, if any, to the people who had ejected me from their lives, and discussing what healthy boundaries might look like. You don't owe them anything, Lindsay reminded me repeatedly. But I know you'll torture yourself if you do nothing. I can't be like them, I admitted. I can't just turn my back completely. Then help on your terms, not theirs. By morning, I had a plan, one that would offer genuine assistance while protecting my own well-being. I researched affordable senior housing options, spoke with a financial counselor who specialized in retirement age crises, and made some preliminary calls to potential employers willing to consider older workers. I met my parents at a diner near the motel, where I had paid for them to stay the previous night. My father's expression was cold and defensive. My mother's alternated between wounded and calculating. Both clearly expected me to offer our home after thinking things over. I've made some decisions about how I can help, I began after we had ordered coffee. I'm prepared to rent a small apartment for you for 3 months and help you get back on your feet. My mother's face lit up until I continued. There are conditions. You'll need to attend financial counseling sessions I'll arrange and pay for. You'll both need to find jobs. I have some leads for positions suitable for your experience and age, and you'll need to create a sustainable budget with the counselor's help. Conditions? My father's voice rose. We're not children, Robin. We don't need you controlling our lives. These aren't controls, they're boundaries, I replied evenly. I'm offering help that promotes independence, not dependence. After everything we did for you growing up, my mother interjected tearfully. This is cruel, Robin. We're your family. We need you to take care of us now. You kicked me out at 18 with a backpack, I reminded her, keeping my voice level. You drained my college fund for Amanda's modeling fantasies. You haven't contacted me in 12 years. And when you finally did come to me, it was only because you needed something. We made mistakes, my father admitted grudgingly. But holding that against us now is just vindictive. This isn't about vengeance, I explained. It's about breaking unhealthy patterns. I'm offering real help more than you offered me, but I won't enable behaviors that got you into this situation. My mother's tears transformed to anger. I'll tell everyone in the family how you're treating us. Your cousins, your aunts and uncles, they'll all know you left your elderly parents to struggle while living in luxury. Tell them whatever you want, I replied, surprising myself with how little her threat affected me. Most of them already know what happened 12 years ago. We went in circles for nearly an hour. They wanted unlimited support without accountability. I held firm to my structured offer. Finally, faced with the reality of returning to their car or accepting my terms, they reluctantly agreed. 3 months in an apartment I'll rent for you. Financial counseling. Job search assistance. That's my offer. Take it or leave it. Fine, my father muttered. We don't have much choice, do we? The next day, I signed a 3-month lease on a modest 1-bedroom apartment in a safe neighborhood. I purchased basic furniture, kitchenware, and groceries to get them started. I arranged for internet service so they could search for jobs and paid the utilities in advance. The financial counselor, Maria Gonzalez, was both compassionate and no-nonsense. She would meet with my parents weekly to establish budgets, debt management strategies, and realistic financial goals. I also arranged job interviews for both of them, my father at a home improvement store that needed experienced staff, my mother at a local bookstore with flexible hours. At our first weekly check-in, the reports were mixed. My parents had kept their financial counseling appointment, but had complained throughout about the humiliation of having to account for every dollar. My father had canceled his job interview, claiming the position was beneath someone with his management experience. My mother had attended her interview but had made disparaging remarks about the wage offered. Week after week, this pattern continued. They did the minimum required to keep the apartment, but resisted every opportunity for genuine change. They complained about the apartment's size, the neighborhood, the financial restrictions. Every conversation circled back to how much easier things would be if I just helped properly by giving them money without conditions. They're not even trying, I vented to Lindsay after a particularly frustrating phone call. They still think Amanda will suddenly reappear with all their money. Lindsay, who had maintained a thoughtful distance from the situation, offered a perspective that shifted my thinking. Maybe this isn't about revenge or even teaching them a lesson, she suggested. Maybe it's about giving them the chance to grow that they never gave you. Whether they take it or not is their choice. Her words helped me see my efforts differently. I wasn't punishing my parents. I was offering them the opportunity for dignity and self-sufficiency. That they resisted this gift said more about them than about my approach. By the 2-month mark, small changes began appearing. My father, running out of excuses and options, took a night security position at an office building, ironically similar to the job I had worked after being kicked out. My mother started part-time at the grocery store deli counter, though she frequently called in sick when the early hours didn't suit her. They were making minimal progress when the unexpected happened. Amanda resurfaced. A mutual acquaintance reported seeing her Instagram posts from Los Angeles, claiming she was launching a lifestyle brand. My parents immediately abandoned their fledgling progress, convinced their golden child had returned to save them. She's back in the country, my mother announced excitedly during our weekly call. She says the European investors fell through, but she has new connections in California. She needs us to come help with her business launch. What business? I asked skeptically. Something with social media influencing and product endorsements, my father explained vaguely. It's a real opportunity this time. Despite my warnings, they emptied their meager savings account and abandoned the apartment to fly to Los Angeles on one-way tickets. Amanda had promised to set them up once they arrived. 2 months passed without a word. Then came a desperate late-night call from a payphone. She's gone again, my father said, his voice hollow. We arrived, and she let us stay in her apartment for 2 weeks. She took the last of our money for a business license and disappeared. The landlord evicted us when the rent wasn't paid. They were sleeping in homeless shelters, taking turns so their few remaining possessions wouldn't be stolen. My mother had developed a persistent cough from the conditions. My father sounded utterly broken. I flew to Los Angeles the next day and found them at the address they'd provided, a rundown shelter in a dangerous neighborhood. They looked even worse than when they'd appeared on my doorstep months earlier. Unwashed, malnourished, and defeated. Back in Boston, I arranged one final form of help. I met them at a coffee shop near my office, a folder of papers between us on the table. This is my last offer, I said without preamble. I found a small studio apartment and paid 6 months' rent in advance. I've arranged interviews at 3 different places willing to hire you, despite your age and spotty work history. I've included contact information for social services that can help with longer-term housing and medical care. I slid the folder across the table. After this, I'm done. Not because I want revenge, but because continuing to rescue you isn't helping either of us. My father stared at the folder for a long moment. When he finally looked up, something had changed in his eyes. "We really messed up with you, didn't we?" he said quietly. All those years, it was the first genuine acknowledgement I had heard from him. "Yes," I replied simply. "You did. I was so convinced Amanda was special that she just needed the right opportunity," he continued. "I couldn't see what was right in front of me all along." My mother reached across the table, her hand stopping just short of touching mine. "We were wrong to put you out that night. Wrong about so many things. I don't expect you to forgive us, but I am sorry, Robin. Truly sorry." The apology I had once longed for now felt almost anticlimactic. I had built a life without their approval or love. Their recognition, while healing in some small way, couldn't undo the years of rejection. "Thank you for saying that," I replied after a moment. "I hope you'll use this opportunity to build something sustainable. Not for my sake, but for your own." We parted with a fragile truce, not reconciliation, not forgiveness, but perhaps the beginning of mutual respect. I had given them the tools to rebuild. Whether they used them was their choice. 1 year later, my father called with unexpected news. He had been promoted to shift supervisor at the hardware store, where he had been working steadily since accepting my final offer of help. My mother had maintained her position at a small bakery and had recently started taking community college classes in bookkeeping. They had moved from the studio apartment I had secured into a one-bedroom place. They had found themselves modest but clean and within their budget. They were, for perhaps the first time in their adult lives, living within their means and planning for their future rather than fantasizing about miraculous windfalls. "We're not wealthy," my father acknowledged during one of our now monthly phone calls, "but we're making it on our own. That means something." The transformation wasn't immediate or complete. They still occasionally mentioned Amanda, though the mythologizing had stopped. They had accepted finally that she had used and abandoned them, just as they had once discarded me. Lindsay and I welcomed our first child, a daughter named Eliza, that spring. After much discussion, we invited my parents to visit their first time in our home since that rainy night 2 years earlier. The reunion was awkward but peaceful. They brought a handmade blanket for the baby and behaved as respectful guests rather than entitled parents. "She's beautiful," my mother whispered, holding Eliza carefully. "You're going to be wonderful parents. We're going to love her unconditionally," I replied pointedly. "And we're going to celebrate whoever she becomes, not who we want her to be." My mother nodded, tears in her eyes. "That's exactly right." As they prepared to leave after their brief visit, my father pulled me aside. "I want you to know something," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "What you did setting those boundaries, refusing to just bail us out, it was the right thing. It forced us to grow up, even at our age." "I'm glad it helped," I replied, somewhat surprised by his insight. "The best revenge you got wasn't leaving us homeless," he continued thoughtfully. "It was becoming a better person than we taught you to be." His words stayed with me long after they left. In refusing to abandon them as they had abandoned me, in offering structured help rather than enabling their dysfunction, I had indeed found something more satisfying than revenge. I had broken a family cycle of favoritism and conditional love. Lindsay and I spoke often about the lessons we had learned from this painful chapter. As Eliza grew and we considered having more children, we remained vigilant against unconscious favoritism or conditional affection. "Every child needs to know they're valued for exactly who they are," Lindsay would say, watching our daughter explore her world with fearless curiosity. "Not for what they achieve or how they make us look," I would add, thinking of all the science fair trophies that had never earned my parents' genuine admiration. Amanda resurfaced occasionally on social media, always with a new venture, a new look, a new persona. She never contacted our parents again, as far as I knew. I felt pity rather than satisfaction at her apparent inability to form lasting connections or build anything of substance. My relationship with my parents evolved into something I never could have imagined. Not close, not warm, but respectful and occasional. They had earned a place at the periphery of my life, through their belated growth, not through biological entitlement. They visited 3 or 4 times a year, always as invited guests rather than presumptive family members. The company continued to thrive. Lindsay and I welcomed a second child, a son. We built a life centered on genuine connection, mutual support, and unconditional love, everything my childhood home had lacked. Looking back on the journey from that rainy night with my backpack to the life I now enjoyed, I realized that helping my parents rebuild with dignity had indeed been more satisfying than abandonment would have been, not because they deserved it, but because it allowed me to remain true to my own values, rather than adopting theirs. True revenge wasn't about punishment at all. It was about liberation, freedom from toxic patterns, freedom to create new ones. If you have ever had to set difficult boundaries with family, I would love to hear your story in the comments. How did you balance compassion with self-protection? Have you found that success is the best form of healing? Please like and subscribe if this resonated with you, and share with someone who might need to hear that sometimes the most loving thing we can do, both for others and ourselves, is to stop enabling destructive patterns. Thank you for listening, and remember, the family you choose can be more healing than the family you were born into.